Some more generations. But in particular, here, you can be on this side, I'll be on this side. All right, there we go. These generations we are looking at today have to do with a degree of subterfuge, a degree of deception with this whole business around the blessing that Isaac is to give to his son. And which son will it be? I think you know the answer by virtue of the fact that we pray Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei. Nobody said Esav, so very good. You've been paying attention. But how exactly we get to that particular sleight of hand will be an operative and open question for today. We're going to talk a little bit further about it, but before we even get there, we are going to read from the Torah. We are on page 157 in your Eitz Chaim 157.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, and Ralph has something to say.
So what's something interesting to me is the person who has to write this, the scribe who transposes this, there's actually a mistake in the Torah according to...
Oh, I know that, yeah.
There's a missing vav.
That's right.
But what I was wanted to point out is just someone who has to scribe isn't supposed to think. They're just supposed to translate the information. And it's kind of very important because you don't take in your own personal knowledge as to what you're writing. You're just passing it on from generation to generation. So they don't know whether it's a mistake, whether it's intentional, whether it points out that maybe God speaks perfectly, but the humans don't transcribe it perfectly. But it also allowed all the historical text before the printing press to be passed from generation to generation. Because without the scribe maybe taking his own personal feelings and saying, I don't really agree with that, I'm going to say this, he put it word for word. So I think it's very important to point out that even a mistake is, because you don't know whether it's a mistake. You don't know whether future generations may see something differently than you did. You're supposed to go from this, put what's there. So it takes a lot of discipline to say do that.
When you first started speaking, I thought you meant that this particular scroll is missing a vav.
Yeah.
No.
Every scroll is missing
I believe
a vav.
so. I haven't witnessed that, but that's according to what... I haven't actually looked at this one either to make sure the vav's not there, but according to the reading, the tikkun, the vav is not there.
Cool beans.
All right. That was it. Sorry.
Thank you. You're going to get this young upstart named David, who is going to begin posing a challenge to him. And Saul starts to get these bad moods, this evil spirit that goes into his head, and consistently he tries to spear David to the wall with a spear. And you saw a little bit of that if you were following along in your language of choice with Otznat's Haftarah. David, as it turns out, is kind of a somewhat problematic figure as well. What happens at the end of Saul is a great story, too, in terms of this sort of necromancy and consulting of witchcraft and dead and the like, and the role of Samuel, the coronator, the kingmaker within all of it. I feel like I'm rambling here because really this isn't on one foot kind of drosh. This ought to be a class. Does anybody want to do Nach, like the prophets, like early prophets as a class where we just do a fast and quick reading? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. All right, we got 6. Tell your friends that'll be 12, and we've got a class right there. So stay tuned for scheduling the class of Nach, of a little bit of going into the prophets, continuing where the Torah lets us off, rather than jumping back to the beginning of Genesis. Maybe we'll do a reading of Judges and Samuel and see some of these things and Kings, the rise and fall of the Israelite kingdom. That would be cool. I would enjoy that very much. Yeah. So Jeff, how about a class instead?
That sounds good.
Cool. All right. No, it's totally cool. I keep kicking around this as an idea in my head and nothing just but to do it. Yes, Madam President.
Can I ask something about the Torah report?
Yes.
This is sort of our instruction book in some ways. This is
A-
what we live by.
Perfect translation of Torah.
And yet, like in the beginning we have Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Then we have Ishmael and Isaac. And like like these brother stories, they're not so good. They're not such great examples. So.
It's also but what to do and what not to do. Right?
Yes. So this is supposed to be our instruction. That's a literal translation of the word Torah as instruction. And yet we find all kinds of, nastiness throughout the words of it. I would say 2 things. One, I want to offer a drosh in the name of my rabbi, my friend and teacher, Rabbi Amy Bernstein, who is the senior rabbi of Kehilat Israel in L.A. You may get to see her later on in this year. Stay tuned. She once gave a shiur, and she taught that the entire book of Genesis is one long-winded answer to Cain's question. When Cain kills Abel, and God says, hey, where's your brother? And Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? The entire rest of the book of Genesis is the answer to that question. And it takes some 48 odd chapters to get around to understanding that, yes, in fact, Cain, you are your brother's keeper. And yes, in fact, to all of the rest of them, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, you are your brother's keeper. It's a long, long-winded answer to that one question. But the other thing I will say about Torah and Tanakh in general, and this is just sort of my commentary on it, why do you have the book of Judges and all the nastiness there and Saul trying to spear David? I don't think it's just the one ineffable, perfect word of God that's everything wonderful about it. I see the Tanakh and the Torah as the story of my people's relationship with God. That, by definition, is going to be a human story. And if it's a human story, you better believe we are going to get it wrong. We are going to mess up. We are going to mess up egregiously. And so as we're grasping at, for, reaching toward different kinds of holiness, as it is, you get all of these sacrifices, the blessings, all of the closeness with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You also get the civil war of judges. You also get Esav and Jacob and the nastiness that's going to unfold with them through the generations if Bereshit Rabbah is to be believed. And so, Lori, to your point, it's instruction in as much as it is the story of my people's relationship with God. And they are people.
This time you can tell it was written by God, because if man had written it, if people had written it, it wouldn't look so bad.
I like that too, Alan. That's another good one. You can tell God wrote it because if people had written it, maybe we'd look a shade better. That fair. All right, yeah. Go ahead, Hollis.
There was also something in the commentary in here that was just so telling.
Yeah.
The story of these twins and identical twins versus fraternal twins and
Oh.
the struggle within the womb
Yeah.
and then outside, and how they talk about the struggle within ourselves, right? Our duality, and how we're always fighting our worst and best, like they're always at odds. And it's kind of this eternal struggle within ourselves. And I thought that was really insightful.
Thank you, Hollis. I appreciate that.
There's so much inward fighting.
Yeah.
This is fun.
This is, you'll see in the commentary to Eitz Chaim, you'll see a lot of the commentary makes a lot of Jacob and Esav representing nations and peoples, and that this is going to be this big destiny and all of that. Hollis, I like where you took it in the exact opposite direction to say, no, these are not vast nations of millions and whatever. These are actually elements that we have within our very own selves. Within one single human being, we have these various impulses, these pulls, the push, the tug. We talked about the good and evil angel sitting on our shoulder last night at Shabbat, anybody who was here for that. This is that same drama just playing out with these figures here. Thank you. Anything else we need to cover while we're up here? This is great. I'm having fun.
Did you say what you wanted to say?
Did I say? No, none of this was anything I was going to drosh on this, but this is fun though. We are, however, we do still have a service in theory. I'm going to invite up our very own president, Lori Barbanel, to lead the prayer for our country on page 148. I was thinking about a couple of things in my own experience that were things that I thought I really wanted at the time. Turned out not great. Has anyone ever had that experience?
Yes.
Yes, Michael.
I can't remember. I've had many of those.
Okay. But he's had them before. Other folks, if you had this experience of thinking you knew what you wanted, you were so excited to get it, and you got it, and yikes. Something wasn't what... Yes, Madam President.
You go on vacation and you want looking for that perfect tchotchke to bring back.
Okay.
And then you realize I have too many tchotchkes.
Yeah.
That experience of going looking for fun little things, the tchotchkes from the airport or whatever, and then you get it, and it's another little $5 tchotchke from PHL airport or whatever. Yes, thank you. I was worried you were going to say the presidency, so I'm glad that wasn't the answer there.
I didn't think about that.
We didn't think about that. Other things that you thought were a blessing and maybe were somewhat less of one. Yes.
This might be something very particular to more like our generation.
Okay.
When you get to middle school and you make a new email that you think is extremely cool,
Oh.
and it's actually immensely embarrassing to track yourself in it for years at least.
Yes.
Right. I would just like to interrupt this by saying, yes, in my generation too, we also made embarrassing emails.
Wait, you weren't in middle school?
Yes, I was in high school, but
Okay.
just saying. Nonetheless.
This is true. Making embarrassing emails, suddenly having email access, getting to make it whatever you want, and then making it something ridiculous. I don't know, those of you who have tracked the generations through the ages and young people, if you have not been a young person when email came out in order to make the mistake of, wow, I'm going to make the coolest email address, and then be completely embarrassed and humiliated by it some 20 years later, that is an amazing experience too. Yeah, Jeff.
Well, how about this notion?
Yeah.
That you look forward to something so much, and then before you know it, it's over. So
A slight variation on it.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of interesting. It's like, okay, well now what? So
Right.
So it's interesting. I think human nature is to look forward to the next thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's one way to look at it too.
Kimmy gave me a present for my for our 10-year anniversary, and it was this really awesome black Gibson Les Paul. I don't know if you've seen me playing this electric guitar, but I think in some ways the years spent wanting one of those, called a Black Beauty, wanting a Black Beauty, there is a sweetness to that like is not the same as having one. That's not the same as having one. Hamora Osnat, our teacher.
I think that sometimes when we go back to childhood memories and you try food, you try things that you thought that were amazing, and then you're like, oh my God, I don't know why we ate that or did that or.
For this rabbi, see under Pizza Hut, foods that you remember being so glorious at the time, and then you think back, why did I like this? This isn't even good. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. Thank you, Michael.
One of the last tray things I ever ate, and will always be a fond memory.
Now we're having true confessions, the last tray things we've eaten here. Thank you, Cantor.
I still miss that. I still miss that.
Page 157 that we saw today. We have this whole subterfuge around getting the blessing. First, Isaac says, I'm getting old. I need to get my affairs in order. I'm going to give a blessing. Rebecca hears this. This doesn't actually start with Jacob. I thought that's an interesting piece, too. And she says to Jacob, hey, Jacob, go pretend to be your brother and go snake the blessing from him. Interesting. Jacob responds at first, no, I'm going to get caught doing that. And she says, no, it's fine. Do the thing with the sheepskin and on your arm, and we'll pretend you're Esau, and it'll all work out. And Isaac nearly catches him throughout this thing. But check out the blessing itself. Verse 28. May God give you of the dew of heaven and the fat of the earth, abundance of new grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow to you. Cursed be they who curse you, blessed be those who bless you. What stands out to you from that? Yes! Thank you. That same thing jumped out to me when I was looking at that today. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow to you. What a blessing. Think about that as a blessing. You're blessing that this family, the entire next generation, is going to be unequal, that one of you is going to be the favorite kid and rule over the other ones. The other ones are going to bow down to you.
Is that such a blessing?
Is that such a blessing? Yes, Rachel?
I mean, it puts a lot of my weight on my shoulders to raise Joe.
As Rachel Clark pointed out, it was a lot of weight on her shoulders to raise her brother Joey. Thank you for all that you do for the Jewish people and raising Joey. Now let's turn the page. Yes, go ahead.
Does it go back to Isaac's relationship with Ishmael? Like, is that in his head?
These things definitely reverberate through the generations. We were talking about that last night at this service, is the resonance of these behaviors, Lador Vador, from generation to generation. But let's jump to the next blessing. And when I say the next blessing, the plot, the game is afoot. We find out what has happened here. Esau goes in for his blessing, and Jacob says, "No, I can't." Isaac says, "No, I can't give you that blessing." And Esau wept aloud. We're at the bottom of 158. He says, "Have you but one blessing, father? Bless me too, father." And Esau wept aloud, and his father Isaac answered, saying aloud to him, top of 159, "See, your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth, and the dew of heaven above." Sounds like the first blessing. Yet by your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. Uh-oh. But when you grow restive, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Even worse. So you have some of the material blessing. Your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth, the dew of heaven above. You'll have enough to eat, enough to drink. You'll be prosperous in that way. And yet you're going to live by the sword. You're going to serve your brother. But don't worry, it's cool. When that wears off in terms of its appeal to you, you're going to break his yoke from your neck. You're going to break out from under him, rebel against him. Both of these blessings don't sound very blessing-like to me, actually, upon unpacking them. They both sound like they're setting the stage. Sorry, Carol? For violence. I was going to say setting the stage, in fact, and locking in this dynamic of conflict for generations to come.
It's more prophecy than a blessing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
For those who didn't hear it, Hollis said this feels more like prophecy than blessing. I have to think on that. Yeah.
Because I was just thinking about this, because Isaac, he can't see, he's blind, but
Yeah.
he sees, right?
But he sees. He sees the nature of things.
Yeah.
And it also takes to me this idea that sometimes if you set the stage with a certain kind of intentionality, you set out with a certain kind of consciousness of what's going to be, well, that's exactly what happens. Because consciously or unconsciously, by the actions you've taken, by what you're aware of, you fulfilled your own prophecy. Is this a blessing or a self-fulfilling prophecy, or is it purely prophetic and knowing the future? I saw a hand over here, so yeah, go ahead.
And just because it's like the Middle East is so crazy, I always think of this sort of as sort of the metaphor, the beginnings of what goes on in the Middle East.
Lori points out, just because the Middle East is crazy, this feels like the harbinger of what would be generations of Middle Eastern conflict. If it makes you feel better, the rabbis of the classical era identify first Esau with Rome, decidedly not Middle Eastern, although they come in and they're going to wreck the temples and do all kinds of terrible things for a lot of generations. And then they later on identify Esau as all of their oppressors in Europe. And so the rabbis are pretty comfortable to say that is... Esau is the evil empire, whatever the empire is out there. And in this day and age of an ongoing war in the Middle East, it's not hard to bring that image, to superimpose that over some of this about what it means to fight with the brother. This blessing to me, first of all, it doesn't seem very much like a blessing. This seems like an object lesson in be careful what you wish for in point of fact. There's also a really interesting thing in here. It's not clear that there is a perfect instruction manual for fathers to give blessings to sons, for the firstborn, for the second son, whatever. Why was this the blessing that Isaac gave? And it's even more interesting if you look. Isaac isn't buying this. Jacob goes to his father, we're on the bottom of 155. He goes to his father, Jacob pretending to be Esau, "Father." And Isaac says, "Yes, which of my sons are you?" And Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Pray sit up and eat of my game. Eat this meal that you asked me to prepare for you, that you may give me your innermost blessing." And Isaac says, "Oh, really? How did you succeed so quickly in preparing this whole feast and catching this animal, my son?" "Ah," Jacob says, "because the Lord your God granted me good fortune." Isaac says to Jacob, "Come closer that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really Esau or not." Jacob goes over there. Isaac feels his arm. The voice is, and he says to himself, presumably, the voice is the voice of Jacob, and yet the hands are the hands of Esau. And it makes you wonder if Isaac set the trap for the both of them and said, if you all can't seem to figure out how to make this work together, which clearly they could not from that incident with the stew and the blessing earlier on, maybe it's not that Isaac cursed them, but maybe Isaac made an observation. That if the two of you can't be there for each other, this is where this winds up. There isn't a great outcome other than this, then you're going to bow to you, and the one over here, you're going to live by the sword, and you're going to bow to him except when you don't want to, and then you're going to cause armed rebellion. If the two of you can't make this work, what future is this? What are you building toward?
Why couldn't you have just said that?
Why couldn't he have just said that? Well, maybe, and I'll go back to Madam President's observation, the Torah is our instruction. Sometimes saying it doesn't teach it as effectively as if we have to go through all of the motions and see them and their pain and heartbreak. I'm thinking in particular about the bottom of 158. Esau wept aloud. He's lost.
Have we lost?
He's gotten it stolen from him. Yes.
As far as Rebecca, she was the one that was also encouraging.
Correct.
Which did not help the situation at all. And here's the one that is instructing as far as a mother and father's, weaving, or should I say, instructing and building up their children. So you could, the dynamics of this family, which goes to show that we are a dysfunctional people.
Well, there's another valence of it. What does it do to a family for a mother to say, that's my favorite child, and the other one, well, why don't you go out in the field and do your thing? It's dark.
It's emotion, civil.
Yeah, it's very dark. Thank you. Yeah, Rachel.
I was gonna, what you said.
Yeah, Michael. What she said. Yeah.
She came from a family of tricksters, of like Laban. She came from that life, and of course, she had a good trick.
Okay, so, Lavan is her relative, and he tricks Jacob. We're going to see that coming up. Stay tuned. It's fair. It's totally fair to say that is in part her lineage. I think it's also Isaac, too. And Isaac, and this awareness of the game being afoot, he doesn't just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. He questions it over and over again, and then he goes with it, and then he offers this blessing that is spiked with servitude. I think the piece in here is a little bit of what Hollis was alluding to with this idea of prophecy. There's also that piece of be careful what you wish for, it might come true. Be careful of wishing to be in charge of other people and run stuff and everybody look up to you and be all-powerful and whatever. Heavy is the head that wears the crown and the like. But also this piece of if you can't get this better, if you can't get this right here, right now in this generation, be really careful what you're going to pass down to the next generation. A little bit from the generations, literally the word Toldot of the Torah portion this week, of what it is we pass down, what it is we hope not to. Do you want the last word, Jill?
No, I want you to have the last word, but on 147, when
Yeah.
she's having the baby, God tells her there's two nations are in your room, two separate people, and the older one's going to serve the younger. So she's probably, that's what I was thinking, that she was just trying to figure out how to make it happen. I don't think she's being malicious on purpose.
And then we have a God who, as we see in the Egypt story, hardens Pharaoh's heart to disastrous outcomes. And what role does obstinacy or that will to power play in some of these things too? And if we're going back to that idea that this is not just God saying stuff, but that this is our people's relationship with God, what does it mean that we keep telling these stories about God where God wants one person to be in charge of the other or take over the other? Is that really the kind of God? Or are we just seeing something of ourselves in that apparition of God?
Maybe we wrote that part.
Maybe we wrote that part. I don't know who wrote that part. It's a lot, but a little bit about what gets passed down through the generations, and hopefully a little encouragement to maybe pass something better down every once in a while. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue on page. What page are